start. Got to start recording. Almost forgot that. Okay. So my pronouns are she, her, hers. This is becoming more and more common, particularly in academia, as a way to really just get everyone used to the fact that that everyone has a pronoun and that people want to be referred to with the pronoun that makes them most comfortable, and that we don't assume what somebody's gender is. And if anybody has questions about that, I do have a link on the syllabus, and I'm happy to talk about it more at length if anybody feels that need. Another thing that we're doing in anthropology and beyond is acknowledging the United States as a settler colony. And if this is the first time you've heard of this, it can come across as like really strange and maybe even radical. But part of that is to understand the ongoing process. Sorry, I might have to, as people come in, I got to let them into the waiting room. So again, some of this stuff might come across as a little bit maybe radical or strange to you, but we're going to talk about all of it in depth, and I'm really happy to answer anybody's questions or concerns about both the content, the material, the history, the framing of the anthropology of the United States. So for example, we know in Muncie, Indiana, that was the traditional homelands of the Miami people, including the Lenape, as Native American groups mixed with one another and became both kind of combined and separate nations. So we usually talk about the Miami or the Lenape. I'm currently in Ohio, which is home to the Shawnee people, including the famous warrior Tecumseh was born right around this area that I'm in. But the place that I'm from in Minnesota is Sioux country. And we're going to be reading a lot about Sioux country because of the kind of activism that they've been enacting more recently. So I want to say thank you again to everybody who participated in the survey, because I really care about your feedback. And that's why if some of you are feeling a little bit anxious that you want a lot more information that you've gotten up front, it's because I just wanted to get your feedback first before we're not going to solidify anything and then make a law and then it stays that way forever. I think we're living in a pandemic, online classes. Some of you were accustomed to that before, some of you were not before last spring. And I want us to understand that I think we all need to be flexible. And so some of my key concerns with any class, but especially online classes, is going to be having a structure that we can try to adhere to while also maintaining flexibility. And sometimes it can be hard to balance those two. I don't think it has to be either or, but I don't think we want to just kind of be super flexible and anything goes, or have too much rigid structure. So I'm really going to try to balance those while getting feedback from you all. And then there also has to be consistency. So you know, when are the deadlines? What are things due? And then along with consistency is transparency. What am I looking for? And so as you can see in the syllabus, I give a rationale for all of my assignments. Why am I assigning this? What good is it doing? Why do we need to do this? And so not only is there a kind of pedagogical rationale, like what are you going to learn from this, but I also put in these workplace competencies from the National Association of Colleges and Employers, that you can understand that the assignments that we have actually do translate directly to workplace competencies, that when you are thinking about a job, a profession, I want you to come out of this class with a language that says, I have these skills from this class. And it's not just like, oh, we did group discussion, we talked. It's how do I translate that language of group discussion into, I know how to do teamwork. I'm a collaborator. I know how to be a leader. I also know how to follow if I need to. And so, you know, we'll talk about that more throughout the course of the semester, but these are not just kind of like, oh, I think we should talk about this. It's because it actually does translate to professional skills later on. So again, I've given you the rationale. I'm also going to give you grading rubrics before an assignment is due so that you can see what I'm looking for, so that you can try to adhere to that. I know a lot of you mentioned that you really like to have examples. I don't know that I'll have examples of every assignment up front, but I will definitely have a rubric and kind of a guide for what you should be looking for. I'm just going to pause there for a minute. Does anybody have questions about that right now before I move on to the groups? I know there's a lot of questions about that. And also feel free to use the chat box. I'm just curious, are all of you feeling pretty familiar with Zoom at this point, or is this still somewhat new to you? Sort of, right? So there are different practices that I am, for example, a lot of times you can use the chat box. It's really good. I muted you all just in case people didn't know that, because background noise can pop up and it can be really distracting for other people. Of course, I do want to hear from you, but if we all are unmuted, then it can just kind of feel chaotic, including in my own house, which you never know what kind of sounds are going to come from the 8-year-old in particular, who's here in the house with me. And then the other thing is that you can, if you're on camera, obviously you can raise your hand and I can see it and you can unmute and ask me a question. Or if you prefer to use the chat box, obviously I'm not going to require that anybody use your camera, but I would like to say that it's awesome to see all of your faces for those of you who are on camera. And if you want to be on camera, but you don't like the background, whatever, you can do what I'm doing. And I don't mind if you were to see the background of my house, but I think it's kind of fun. Like all the pictures I post are going to be from different places that I've been. This is a place we went canoeing this summer here in Ohio. So you can do that. You can go over to Zoom, and if you go under Zoom preferences, you can change your background. It's kind of fun. If you didn't know that, you can play around with that. Not that you have to. I love all of your backgrounds. Looks awesome. Just giving you some fun Zoom tips. So if you have any questions about that, sometimes people do like this. If they agree, they might go like this. You can also, down on the bottom, there's reactions on the very bottom of your screen. And you can do things like thumbs up, that sounds great. And you can kind of mess around. There's not that many emojis on Zoom, but they're there if you want to use them. You could also do, there's no thumbs down. So sorry, if you really disagree with what I'm saying, you'll have to like go like this or something, I guess. Which is fine. You could also use the chat box. Any questions about that so far? No. Okay. So I think the questions that I wrote down that I saw from your surveys was one, how are the groups going to meet, and some trepidation about the groups, understanding that group dynamics are always somewhat difficult to not always. Sometimes they're difficult to navigate. But again, that is a workplace competency. There's very few jobs in life where you never have to work with other people. So that's why we're doing this. I do want to talk to you about that today, suggestions that can alleviate some of your anxiety besides opting out of a group altogether, which I know some of you want to do, but I'm going to encourage you to stick with the groups. I would say that most people wanted either me or Canvas to choose, and I think I can choose if you want me to, that's fine. And then I think what we can do is I will assign the groups, kind of smaller groups, so that you don't have to manage too many people's different schedules. And then we'll stick with those groups if they're working. If they're not working, I would first try to encourage you to deal with any issues you have within your group, because again, that is part of life. But also I do think it's helpful to have a mediator sometimes. So if the group is not working, you can let me know, and I can either come to your group or I can reassign you. Obviously I can do that. And then you can meet with your group however you want. I would recommend meeting online, either using Zoom or, we have WebEx, Skype, however you want. I mean, Snapchat, I don't care how you meet, but you would decide that as a group when and where you want to meet, just as long as you get those discussion questions answered. And then I posted kind of the group discussion guidelines and rubric. Again, I'm super flexible about that. I think the two most important positions in a group that kind of need to be designated are a leader for the one particular discussion that can be held accountable for when the group meets. So, somebody just says, okay, I'm going to take the lead on this one. I'm going to contact my group members. I'm going to set up a schedule and try to figure out when we're going to meet. And then of course the recorder. And that arguably might be the bigger job. And you only have to do that. Well, I don't know if you have to do it once, probably small groups. You might have to do it a couple of times, but that's the one that I'm going to use the recorder's notes to, to figure out who's participating. I'm not going to be looking at this and be like, Maggie Davis didn't say one word during her group. Hi, Maggie. Good to see you. I'm kidding. But I'm not going to be looking at that and being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. But the idea is that if the group is small enough hopefully what happens is that the introverts and the extroverts get along. Because in a really large group setting, I know we all know that there's people that just absolutely do not mind talking all of the time. Every time there's a question, they're like, I know, I have something to that. And there's people that would prefer to go through the entire semester having never spoken in class once, right? And then you've got the whole spectrum in between. So if we have groups small enough, the idea is that I genuinely, and I think it's important for all of you to actually hear what other people are thinking about the material. You all, I don't care if you're all from the same place, you're around the same age, you come to this class with different backgrounds, different opinions, different experiences, and it will be helpful for your fellow classmates to figure out how to live in the world with people who have different opinions from you. So that's part of the goal of this, right? And so the idea is that everybody participates in this. If you don't want all the different group responsibilities that I put there, you don't have to. You can see at the bottom, I say that if you want kind of to reassign and have different roles within the groups, you can do that so long as there's definitely a recorder. I think somebody had a great point of like, everybody should be kind of, what was the word? Everybody should be participating and kind of questioning and maybe serving as a devil's advocate or something. So I'm open to that. I guess my question for you today is, how big should the groups be? I'm thinking between 3 and 4. Would you like to go bigger than that, or is 3 and 4? Does that jive with you all? Yes, thumbs up, okay. And then if I start with, say, somewhat random on Canvas and see how that goes, and then you know, we can be in touch, and we can also, you might say, you know, I love my group, I never want to leave my group, we're going to stay together forever. Or you can say, I like my group, but you know, I'd love to talk to some other people, and after 4 weeks we'll change up the groups a little bit. We can also try that. And again, if you want to communicate to me privately what you prefer on that, that's absolutely fine. And then the group discussions, again, to try to alleviate some stress, it's not like every week you're meeting. So we're going to go with one synchronous class meeting every week, and then one group discussion every unit. Okay, so that means like basically you're meeting as a group about every 3 weeks or so. And so hopefully that is manageable. And then let's see, what was the other question about groups? I had a point, it's gone. Oh yeah, so groups, and some of you were saying like the unit blocks that I had on the original syllabus seemed a little bit intimidating. So I did repost on Canvas. I broke those down for you into the weeks and suggested things that you do to kind of spread out the workload. But the reason I organize things into units is because, let's say you have another class, you have a big paper presentation, and maybe you can't read the chapters in the books that I assigned, but I don't know, over the weekend you decide you're going to sit down and read 3 chapters. I mean, that's why I think in terms of chunks and not like every day. But I broke it down for you so you can arrange your schedule accordingly. So speaking of books, these are the 4 books. The first book that we're going to be reading is When the Hills Are Gone. And this is about environmental anthropology and about fracking and sand mining in Wisconsin. The next one is called The Torture Letters, and this is about police, where very well documented police torture of criminal suspects in Chicago. And that is, I think, pretty appropriate for pretty much any time in the United States, especially after the last 6 months, where more and more people are becoming more aware of the way that systemic racism perpetuates itself in the United States. We'll talk about that in that unit. The next one is called Feeding the Crisis, and this is about the role of food stamps and the welfare state in the United States. So that'll be the 3rd book that we read. And then the last one is called Contingent Citizenship, which is about adoption processes. And that'll be the last book that we read. Let's see, I will make sure that all of the kind of the assignments for every unit, I'm not going to put up everything on Canvas right now, but I'll make sure that the next unit's information is up for you well in advance for anybody who should, you know, want to work ahead or get to know what there is. In the meantime, even if everything from the unit is not up, if you look in the calendar, you know, all of the due dates and stuff will be there. Okay, so questions about that? Are we feeling okay about the structure and guidelines for everything? Sorry. It's hard to turn these things off when they come to my computer and I'm on my computer. Okay. What else? Am I missing anything that you all would like to talk about right now? I know that in my face-to-face classes, which for the record, once again, I would prefer to be doing, I open every single class that I ever teach with comments, questions, and announcements. And I like the idea of trying to do that here. I think the anthropology of the United States means that anything happening anywhere is relevant for our class, arguably. So, you know, if there is something happening in current events and you want to talk about it with the class and or with me present, then I'm totally open to that for synchronous class meetings. You can say, wow, we should talk about that. So like, for example, what's happening in Wisconsin right now is pretty relevant to what's going on in the class, if you're not familiar with that. Or even Hurricane Laura. I almost always do a unit on natural disasters and hurricanes. And I opted not to do that this time. It's so difficult to decide what to address in a class. I mean, the United States is huge. There's so many different topics that we can talk about in this class. And so I think because of that, that's why I'm giving you the option to talk about something that you're passionate about at the end of the unit. So when we're done with everything, you will work either independently or in groups as big as you want to make a presentation and record it. You won't have to do a written paper, but you'll have to do like a PowerPoint or a Prezi or something like that, and then record yourself talking about it. And when, you know, the time draws closer, or if you're thinking about this and you want my opinion and feedback at any point in the semester, let me know. But like looking at natural disasters like Laura and Katrina in New Orleans, that was, you know, 20 years ago now, that would be a great topic. Or, you know, it is a pretty big year for the election. We will be talking about the election. I think it would be really unfortunate to not address that in this class. So as we build up to it, we can talk about how anthropologists look at elections and how we look at the political sphere. And you could also do a final project on, you know, the outcome of the election. I think that would be really, really interesting. Or you can follow up with something that you enjoy talking about. You want to do something more on that. All of those are possibilities. So any questions about that? No. Based on what I saw in the surveys, you all really understood the difference between identity and identification. I think that's going to be terms that we're going to come back to again and again to try to understand why the difference between how somebody identifies and how other people identify them is really important in shaping our larger culture. In addition to topics such as the difference between individualism and more group or collective thinking. So I think, oh, one other question here was, do we have to pay for films? There's a film assignments, you never have to pay for films. If you don't have a streaming device, almost all of the films, almost all of them that I have assigned, there are choices in what to watch. And so if you don't have Netflix, you know, if you don't have Netflix or Hulu or something, then you can always go to BSU Canopy. Hopefully you're all familiar with Canopy. It's the Ball State streaming service. And so you will have to go in and you know, enter your password and BSU login. But, you know, there's going to be a lot of free films to watch there if you don't have Netflix or Hulu. But in all of those choices of films, if you don't like the choices I gave you and you want to watch something else, that's great. You know, you could send me the title or not, frankly. I mean, I trust that you're going to be able to pick a film that matches with the unit. And the idea here, just to kind of wrap up a little bit, the way that I design this course and future courses, that I'm trying to pay attention to what we call universal design. Is anybody familiar with the term universal design? Okay. It came out, kind of started in the 1990s and became bigger and bigger, and it comes out of disability studies primarily, and it's used in urban planning, architecture, but also increasingly in education and pedagogy. And the idea is, and I'll put a link on Canvas if anybody's interested in this, there are 7 principles. And the idea is that if you can be as inclusive and accessible as possible, then everyone benefits. So it's not just because if somebody has a disability, let's say they have a hearing impairment, or you know, they might be blind and have a sight impairment. The idea would be like, if I'm teaching a class, I have to take that into consideration, that I have a student who can't hear me right now, and that ideally I would be having closed captioning. And so that's something I'm working on over time, is to try to make everything more accessible, because even if you don't have a hearing impairment, seeing the words at the bottom of the screen can be helpful. And so the idea again is that if you design it to try to think about multiple people's bodies and mental health, physical health, and that usually all of us can benefit that. So like one example would be, say, elevators. You know, elevators are put in buildings for ADA compliance, American with Disabilities Act compliance, so that if somebody can't walk upstairs, there's an elevator. But I'm guessing that a lot of you have used an elevator, even if you don't need it for a physical disability. And so that's the kind of idea that I'm trying to incorporate into the classroom, which is also part of the group work. And then I would encourage you to take notes. For everything. If you want advice on how to take notes, I can help you with that. But I think this is an advanced class, so I'm guessing some of you have your own sort of ways of taking notes at this point, but I can post a short tutorial on that. Okay, and then the last question that you had was, how will challenges be formulated? I like the word challenges a lot better than like homework assignment or essay assignment, because I feel like that sounds daunting, even if it's familiar. And I like the idea of challenges because it's, the idea is let's try to get out of our comfort zone a little bit, not to make you uncomfortable on purpose, but to make us uncomfortable in a good way. If you're never uncomfortable, there's a good chance you're not learning as much. And again, I'm not saying that to be like mentally, we don't want you mentally distressed all the time, definitely not. But the idea of using the anthropological perspective, we're going to look at something from a way that maybe you haven't looked at before, and then really kind of interrogate that. So the challenges are all going to be different. They're going to align with the kind of units. So the first one will have you thinking more about human and non-human relationships. Say, what is our relationship to like physical landscape in the United States? And then for the torture letters, you're going to see that that the author writes this book as letters. He writes it to different people to educate people about this topic, and you will be writing a letter. So that looks different. And then in the third case, we're going to be doing somewhat of a journal. We're going to talk about the welfare state. We're going to look at personal budget making, and then we'll also hopefully try to incorporate the election in there. So that'll be more of a journal about political economy in the United States. And then the last one, I'll have you do a kinship chart, and we'll be talking about the relationship between family, kinship, and stuff to American culture. So, you know, each challenge will be a little bit different, but again, I'm going to give you plenty of time to look at those challenges in advance so that you know what's coming for that unit in advance. The challenge is always due on the last day of the unit. So like there might be a 3-week block where we're reading a book, listening to a podcast, and then at the end of that book, then you'll do the challenge. Okay, so I think I have addressed all of the questions I saw posted in the surveys. Does anybody have any other questions that I have not addressed that I can address for you right now? No? Okay, so I believe I said that today is the first meeting on Thursday, and I'm really happy that I think over half the classes here. We've got 14 people here. So today's a good time. And I want to say that there's even more people that can join us on Tuesdays at this time. And I think, are all of you able to also come Tuesday at this time? I want to say that most of you are also able to come Tuesday, but I think there was 1 or 2 people that could also come on Tuesday. So our next synchronous meeting, the Zoom link is already on Canvas, will be Tuesday at 11. And that will be, I think that'll be more of like, I'm going to share my screen. I'll do sort of a lecture / discussion where you participate, and it'll be more interactive. And then I will also be posting asynchronous lectures. I'm going to try to keep them short brevity and concise speaking is not one of my strong points, and I will work on that, I promise. I know you don't want to watch me for 2-hour lectures. So my goal is 30 minutes or less. And so if they're too long and you find you're not watching them, I would actually like to know that. I put a great deal amount of time into like planning my lectures. And if like nobody's watching them, then I could just stop doing it, or I can change things up so that you will watch them. So I genuinely appreciate your feedback on these kind of things. And I will be doing sort of a midterm review. I think I'll have an outside person come in and check in with you. So if you don't feel like talking to me directly, you can talk to that person. And again, if you have any other questions, I'm available on email. I will be getting back to you very quickly, especially during the day. You can send me emails at any time. But if you send me an email, obviously at like 11 o'clock at night, you're probably not going to hear back from me until the morning. I'm consistently at my computer and responding, unless I'm at meetings or whatever, between 8 and 5 every day. And again, you can send emails at any time, but I don't have these alerts going off that I'm going to respond to right away. I'm going to try to kind of save my evenings and weekends for family, but that doesn't mean I'll never respond. So, okay. That's all I have. You're all so quiet. The other class was asking me so many questions. That means it's so clear. Everything is completely crystal clear. That's awesome. Or you'll think of a million questions after this, and that is okay. You can email me after this if you want. I will get you organized into groups today so you know who the people are and you can get with them. And I think that's the biggest thing that I need to do next. Right? So everything up there, the last thing I need to do is, your assignment, your film, your challenge, your discussion, everything is up for the next couple of weeks. So the only thing you need right now is groups, as far as I can think of, right? Okay, well, I'm excited to get to know you all better, and thanks for popping in today, and I will see you hopefully Tuesday at 11, okay? Bye.